I am Jim Miller. I'm a senior CX advisor at Medallia, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Kay Martini. Would you
Hello.
explain your role?
Sure. I'm a director of product management here at Medallia. I lead the data and AI platform teams.
Here today, we are going to talk to you about AI that fits and actually mapping the right use cases to the role that you're looking at. So essentially, we are very aware that AI has become a little bit of a buzzword in some respects, and we want to show how, as CX practitioners, we can actually get the most out of it, particularly with the tools that we have within Medallia. So we're going to have some really interesting conversation today. We're going to keep the energy high, despite the fact that my colleague here got up at 1 a.m. like a lunatic. So yeah, super excited, and we will talk to you for about 10 minutes, and then we will kick off our session. So, Kerry.
Awesome. Thanks. So, we're all living in a world where AI is everywhere. It's in our tools, our co pilots, and assistants. What's much harder to find is real measurable value. Most organizations are experimenting, but struggling to bridge the gap between AI activity and AI impact. And that's why we wanted to run this session today. This is intentionally not an AI 101 session. You will walk away with three concrete things. You'll be able to know how to apply Medallia Gen AI to your role and adjacent roles within your organization, how to explain that value to the stakeholders back at home. And in front of you, you have a role-based use case map that you'll be filling out, and you'll be able to act on that and bring it back to your organization. Most organizations are using a mix of general purpose and what we call fit for purpose AI. Medallia AI is one of those systems. General purpose AI is things like ChatGPT. Some of you might be using one right now on your phones. And Medallia's fit for purpose AI is a little bit different from that, right? General purpose AI is amazing for exploration, it's amazing for ideation, but it's disconnected from your CX workflows. So it's really hard to govern at scale. Medallia AI is a fit for purpose system, and it's built within your Medallia ecosystem. And what that means is it's embedded in your workflows and it's frontline ready. It's governed and doesn't require prompt engineering expertise. Today, for our workshop, we're going to be mapping against our generally available features and the two amazing features that Fabrice and Joanna, who's somewhere in the room, just presented to you at the keynote. So I'm going to run through these really quickly to give you a high-level understanding, but on your table, there's a QR code. So do not feel like there's a test. You will be able to access the descriptions of these features as part of the workshop. So for intelligent summaries, this allows our teams to reduce the effort of understanding those interactions. So this is conversations, feedback, and that allows teams to get to what matters most faster. Root cause assist, this helps teams to understand the why behind why their score is changing. And that makes it so that they can not have to wait for that offline analysis. Themes with Gen AI uncovers granular themes and trends without the manual intervention and management of those models. And Smart Response is our frontline AI beauty. It helps generate personalized on-brand replies in seconds so you can reach more of your customers more quickly. Coaching Intelligence will tailor those coaching plans to agent and data goals so you can really hit those high impact areas across those interactions. I won't spend too much time on these. Hopefully everyone was able to attend the keynote and you were able to see the demo of Insights Assistant. This is being able to talk to your data. And for Smart Topic Builder, this allows you to discover new topics in your untagged data. This is not theoretical. As Fabrice mentioned on stage, we have many customers that are already using this today, and you are going to attend other talks where you will hear many more proof points. So I won't belabor too many of these, but I'll call a few out. We have a global hospitality brand that reported saving 80% time saved annually. What that equated to is 3.5 years for their brand. And for CX and ops teams, they're getting to the key insights with themes in days and not weeks. For one of our pet retailers, that meant identifying a surcharge, fixing it, and moving on to the next issue. From here, Jim is going to walk us through the mental model behind the idea of AI fit.
In terms of when we talk about AI fit, we are really thinking about for your individual, and again, as all of us as CX practitioners in the room, there's a very specific way to kind of consider how we're actually using this. And essentially, we cannot say that one tool fits all, right? So we really need to consider, first of all, the role. So actually, is there a specific AI tool that is going to fit that role that you need to do? The job that that role is trying to actually do and try to achieve, the workflow that the people actually live in every single day. So for example, does it actually fit with what you have available in your organization? The data behind it, is it rich enough? Have you actually got what you need to be able to actually understand the data that's coming from your Gen AI tool? And then finally, the way that you can actually then govern that data. How can you actually push it into the organization? Is it appropriate? Is there actually stuff that you should share and you potentially shouldn't share? Now, if we miss any of these, using the actual tool potentially breaks down, right? It's not as useful as you need it to be. So it's something we really need to consider when we're looking at each of these tools, what fits for the individual job, right? And looking at that job level, not from an overall kind of org chart perspective. So we're going to have a look at a couple of examples here of different jobs and how they might look at something like the Gen AI tools we have available. So first of all, we have our director of CX. Now, obviously, from their perspective, they are making sure that the business is running the way it should be. We're looking at our CX and we're making sure it's as efficient, as kind of positive as we want it to be. But ultimately, this person is extremely busy. There's lots of different priorities in the organization. There's lots of different points of view, different data they've got to assess. So maybe they might actually look at their Gen AI tools and say, right, I'm going to look at root cause assist. I want to get straight into why is my NPS score going up or down? What are the key segments that's affecting it? What are the key topics that are leaning into that? We then have our insight analyst. Again, we have someone who's trying to get into the data, but essentially they are dealing with issues of timeliness, of getting insight to the actual organization, providing actionable insights that they can actually do things with, and actually making sure that they're getting it to the right people at the right time. When we're talking about our insight analysts, they might look at something like intelligent summaries and actually say, I want to get a quick understanding about why a certain topic is doing something. Can I therefore actually get a better understanding of how we can develop that and actually get some actionable insights quickly to the organization? And finally, we have our frontline team leader. Now, despite his headset, this doesn't have to be a customer service. This could be engineer lead. This could be someone that's actually looking over any kind of frontline team, right? They are essentially looking at a number of different frontline team members who essentially have their own skill set, a different way of managing them, different kind of approaches and what they need. Now, for each of these people, they could potentially look at a tool like coaching intelligence, right? So understanding what are the goals that we want to achieve as an organization and looking at the conversations that their colleagues are having and that their kind of direct reports are looking at, what is the best approach to actually coaching them to get the most from it? So hopefully that's given you guys a quick understanding of kind of how we can approach different tools depending on different roles and the kind of solutions that you're trying to achieve. Our workshop today, we have obviously just gone through the AI tools with you. We've also got them on the sheet, as we said, down there. So you've got the QR code. You can see all of them in a little bit more detail, but there is a quick explanation on each of them. Now, the first thing we want you to do, and I mentioned it before, those of you that are sat on your own or in ones and twos, join another table. The whole idea of today is to collaborate and get some good ideas flowing. Okay. Now, we want you to familiarize yourself with the tools. And then as a table, you're going to select one of the business problems on the sheet that's in front of you. Now, the idea of this is to try and actually come up with one goal that could work for your pretend organization, for your table, and actually understand how can you use the tools to really get the insights and actually solve a problem. Because ultimately, if we can't drive action with what we're trying to do today, there is no point any of us doing this, right? Because otherwise we're just hoarding data. We want at the end to have a little bit of an open discussion. We might ask you to provide a bit of feedback in terms of what you guys have looked at. And again, we'll come around and we'll have a bit of discussion time at the end. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So we have 25 minutes to go through this. If you have any questions, as I say, Gary and I are around. You've also got the guys over there that can also help. Any questions at all, ask away. Okay, so I'm going to ask, as we start, can we just get a little raise of hands? Who did which kind of mission? So can we have those that did that kind of why blind spots? So number one, just so I can get an understanding of who's done what. One there. Perfect. Number two. Pretty much everybody else. Okay, number three. Anyone did number three? Okay, and anyone did number four? Yay. Okay, good. So we've got spread around. Okay. I want to dive, first of all, let's do the why blind spot. Sorry, guys, that you're the only ones that did it. So I am going to ask if you can share a little bit in terms of the context that you went through, share a little bit in terms of some of the nice areas. So things when we're talking about what's the bottlenecks, cost of inaction, things like that, and then your tools, if you don't mind. So we have a mic runner, this table here.
We picked the Y blind spot. As far as the bottleneck is concerned, we said things like time, lack of responses, data accessibility, data specificity. One of the examples we talked about was just our ability to have access to different segments of data, race, ethnicity, gender, et cetera, and being able to include that in our Gen AI. The amount of human resource we have to complete any given work, so full-time employees, for example. For cost of inaction, we talked about brand value, essentially going into word of mouth. For how it affects the human team, we were thinking about loss of confidence in presentation. Leaders do feel blind. It could be that you go in a wrong strategic direction. You have a wrong approach to
Yep.
addressing the problem, and that could just have larger consequences on the business in general.
With all of that in mind, I know I talked to a few people about this. Obviously, one thing that we kind of were focusing on is that business outcome perspective of it, right? And I know we talked about that in a little bit of detail as well. I think one thing to consider for everyone is when you're then having a conversation, when you get the insights from this, and you're having a conversation with leadership about why it's really important to actually get stuff done, business outcomes make it really easy because that's what they care about. They care about bottom line. They care about how they're actually the business is making money. As I think Sid mentioned it this morning, that's kind of what they're focusing on. So for you guys, when you're doing this, I want you to constantly refer back to what is the business objective and business outcome of why we would look at this. So can you share a little bit around the tool, the tools you guys might use for that?
We got a little bit into the tools, but we just mainly identified root cause assist, themes with Gen AI, Insight Assistant, and Smart Topic Builder.
That's really useful, guys. Thank you so much for sharing number one there. I am going to, because I know this table we're talking a lot, the table next to that one, please. They were talking about number two, so it would be great if they could go into a little bit of detail as well, please.
Sure. So we took it actually from an EX perspective on the employee side. So in terms of bottleneck, we experience HR folks. They're extremely busy with a zillion different things going on. And so that's where the bottleneck is like they just don't have time to go through and read thousands of comments on what employees are saying about their experience. And so the cost of that from an employee relations standpoint could be somebody may be giving a comment regarding harassment or a threat or something like that could have a really negative impact. And so, of course, those are the things we want to rise to the top really quickly. And then also from an engagements perspective, if they don't feel like they're having the tools or the resources or the training to help them succeed in their role, then they're out the door. They're like, you're not helping me. Why should I help you? And that's a huge investment that we, of course, make in their training. And so that's kind of the effect, I think, is like, folks could lead to lower engagement scores, could lead to not feeling safe, which of course has a downstream impact into how they're interacting with customers, how they're talking about our brand and don't come work here, right? Like, so that's impacting our attrition. And we talked about intelligent summaries, root cause assist, and the insights assistant.
Perfect. So one of the reasons why I wanted to focus on you guys was because there's a slightly different perspective when it comes to EX, which I think is really interesting. I also think that speed to action thing really came when we were talking to you guys in terms of it's important to get to something quickly, which when we're talking about our Gen AI tools is going to be really important, right? Because the longer things kind of drift on, the more harm it's potentially having. So I think it was really interesting hearing you guys talk. So thank you so much for that.
We took a look at number two as well. Bottlenecks, lots and lots of data, just difficult to diagnose what the problem actually is.
Mhm.
Silos that departments aren't talking to each other, an opportunity, so difficult to root cause underlying issues. Cost interaction, ultimately losing customers and impact on retention. And then how does it affect the human team, leaders feeling blind? And areas of opportunity. So we too talked about Smart Topic Builder so we could get to the topics very quickly. And clearly the human impact is time. We have day jobs besides this. Clearly the solution is retention. But the other tools we looked at was root cause analysis,
Yep.
Insights Assistant.
Perfect. One of the reasons why I want to focus on these guys as well is one of the things we talked about was the actual role of text analytics and topics in our Gen AI features. So essentially, similar to what you were talking earlier, we have our ChatGPTs of the world, which go out and it's quite unstructured and it can be a little bit different and you're getting a lot of different kind of inputs. What we're trying to provide is a structure for you guys to work within. So it becomes a lot easier to actually understand your business and then you can get speed of action through that. And I think something like Smart Topic Builder is something that could be really useful, particularly as the guys mentioned, they're not necessarily using text analytics at this point. So actually you can get them up and running quite quickly and we can actually then start to look at some of the really cool stuff there. So thank you guys. I really appreciate that. And then we have one last one, which I think was 4. So was it you guys at the front? Yeah.
For us, it was a context trap, and it kind of went beyond just integrating between different platforms, between different channels. But one of the things that we were really looking at is a client can give you a bad score once, and maybe that bad score is for digital, maybe that bad score is for a phone call. But when they're giving you a bad score for the same thing across 6 different channels, and they're not integrated, you're now identifying a trend that maybe was compartmentalized, but it's truthfully not. There's multiple ways we kind of see that AI can help tackle that. And it's a bit of an iterative approach. So Smart Topic Builder combined with Insights Assistant, I think that is how we'd really want to structure our then intelligence summaries. We get per year around 10 million responses. And if you take that 10 million, each response probably has 2 to 3 actual verbatim
Yeah.
fields. It's an overwhelming amount of unstructured data. The human impact is we used to have a enterprise-wide insights team of like 6 to 8 people. They can't manage that.
Yeah.
The line, we pushed that down to the line of business teams, 52 programs. They really can't manage it.
Yeah.
So you need those intelligence summaries. And for problem 4, the intelligence summaries is going to be huge impact for middle level leadership executives for strategy. I think where really the more value it's going to be, and Carrie kind of exposed you to this yesterday, is integrating those intelligence summaries into TX profiles.
Yeah.
So it's no longer a strategic decision. It's a tactical frontline decision to where you have the 6 most recent feedbacks a client gave. And when they're now interacting on the 7th time, you could give a summary of those 6 interactions for the associates that's working with them right then and there.
Yep.
It's an immediate return. It's not we're seeing a trend, maybe over a month, maybe over a quarter. We're building a strategy or an action plan we're going to implement next month or next quarter. You can start doing things like same day or next day. So, really like the human impact is, for one, if we are able to identify those multiple pain points that are common, immediate impact for clients is attrition. And like I said before, a client can have one bad experience.
Yep.
When they have that bad experience 6 times, that's when they leave. And then the human impact for our teams is you now have informed teams. You have informed associates to
Yep.
where they can actually take action on that real world feedback.
I love that. I actually love the fact that you're thinking about it over a time period as well. They're not isolated instances, realistically. And actually what we do find, the more you look at things like TX profiles particularly, you can actually see someone's literally time period of how they're flowing. And you can literally see they're getting more annoyed. And so actually being able to capture that, going back to kind of what you guys are saying about retention and things like word of mouth, it gets to it really quickly so that you're not having to try and solve that problem later on, right? So it allows you to get ahead of the game a little bit. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at time. I am going to first of all, thank you guys for sharing. Another thing, just very quickly before we wrap up the workshop, take your worksheets home. Please apply it to your businesses. Keep thinking about it. It's a really useful way just to consider how you can make the most out of the tool and actually get the most for your business as well. And Carrie's going to wrap us up.
Please, if you have time now, we would love your feedback.
Do that.
You're going to be doing this a lot, but we would really love to hear from you.
Yeah, and look forward to seeing you throughout the conference. So
Thank
thank
you
you all.
for your engagement. Thank you.